Okay, so moving on to the counter snare, I'm going to show you the easiest way to get an instant drill bounce. So once you've chosen your sample, I do this for pretty much every drill beat that I make. The easiest way to get a drill bounce is this. So you want to start on the first one, then you're going to skip 2, click on the next one, skip another 2, click on that one. Right, so if you were making a standard trap pattern, for example, you might be filling in each 2-step. The only difference is we're skipping 2, and then skipping 1. And that just repeats. But I like to speed it up by doing this. So I just have the first 3 notes in, then I hit F7 to go to the piano roll. I hit Control and A to highlight the whole grid, and then I right click and drag this red bar back until it gets here. This is halfway between the first and second bar. And then I press Control and B, and that just copies it. I keep pressing that until it gets to the 5th bar. And then I press Control and A to highlight everything again. And then I right click and drag this back because I like to start off working with the first 4 bars. And then once I've got a pattern that I like, I'll copy it into the next phrase or the next 4 bars and then make a few changes for variation, which I'll talk you through in a bit. Right now I'm working in song mode because I've got rendered audio in the playlist. So I want it to play this drum pattern that I'm working with and the audio. If I just had it in pattern mode, I wouldn't be able to hear anything in the playlist. So because I've got it in song mode, I need to drag this back. And it's just going to loop this 4 bars whilst I'm working on the counter snare pattern. Right, so when you're making counter snares or hi-hat patterns, there's 4 main things that you want to focus on. Focus on velocity, pitch, step length, and rolls. So in drill beats, we want to create a bounce. And the main way to create that bounce is by focusing on the things that I just mentioned, especially the velocity. If you look right here, all the notes that I've got have the exact same velocity. If you play it, all these notes are going to hit the same volume. And we can see the velocity at the bottom here. If you can't see yours, then you just go to the control button here and then note velocity. You can also adjust the panning down there, which I'll get into soon, but just focus on velocity for now. So even just by changing like the second one, you can instantly create a bounce. When I mention the step length, I've got it on line right now. If I go on quarter step, you're gonna have more notes to play with. For the most part, I keep it like this. And then I add notes in between to create more bounce. But the notes that I add in between, I bring the velocity down. So if I left click on one of these notes, I hold Alt and use my mouse wheel to scroll down. If you're not using a mouse, you can just click the velocity down there to bring it down. And then if you click this note, the next note that you put in is gonna be the same velocity as that one. So at this stage, I just like to create some bounce. So let's see what I can think of. So I've got a few notes in there. It's just adding to that bounce. And now I'm going to have a look at a roll. So to make a roll, I could either zoom in and manually add some notes this way, or I can select the end of one note and then drag it out, depending on how I want to chop it. So basically what I want to add here is I want to add a counter snare roll just before it gets to the second bar. So I'm just holding Control, left clicking and dragging over this note, then I'm hitting Alt and U, and this is going to open up the chopper. So if I play with this time wheel here, you're going to see if I bring it up, it's making less chops. If I bring it down, there's more chops. Try this one. I like the way that sounds. I'm going to click accept, but instead of having these at the same velocity, even if they're brought down, what I'm going to do is have it gradually come up. So whilst I've still got these notes highlighted, I'm going to come down here, and then instead of left clicking, I'm going to right click and drag up. And this is going to make it so it's a little bit more of an even rise. If I just use the left mouse, it's going to be harder to get that even step. So right clicking and dragging up, it just sounds a lot smoother. I'm going to add another note here. And actually this first note, I want the velocity to be back up. So then it's going to hit the note and then quickly fade up. I could either just bring this velocity down, or let's just try bring another note in. Yeah, I like the way that sounds. See if we can play with pitch too. So I like the way that sounds here. Maybe we could add another roll in this section, but instead of bringing the velocity up, I'm going to bring it down. So this one's rising up, and then it's going to sound like it's falling here. So I like that combination of bringing one up, then the other down, just to add to that bounce. And there's no rules for where you need to add these rolls, but some of my go-to positions are just before the end of a bar, sometimes at the start of a bar, sometimes just before a snare or on a snare. Maybe we could add another one here. Let's try something interesting here. So like I said, sometimes I like to add rolls on the snare. I can see the snare and the ghost note behind. Maybe we can make this one faster. And we can bring this one down. Maybe we could bring this one back up. Straight here. So I like the way it sounds there. So let's bring this back. Alright, cool. I think I've got something for the first 4 bars. Maybe I could play around with the velocity a little bit more. Alright, cool. So I've got the first 4 bars. I'm feeling that. What I'm going to do now is just press Control and B, and this is going to copy it to the second 4 bars. So just to keep things interesting, I like to copy it across and then just tweak a few things in the second 4 bars, just to add a bit of variation. And remember, because I'm working in the playlist, I just need to right click on this red line and then extend it so I've got the full 8 bars. And now it's just going to keep looping that. So I'm already happy with this section. I can just click here. Alright, so because the snare pattern's different in this section, the counter snare pattern doesn't make as much sense, so I'm going to change a few things here. And let's try something wild. Let's bring this one all the way out. I'm going to chop it quite a bit, have it come all the way down, and then straight away, I'm going to have another one, but this one's going to come all the way up. Try this one instead. Alright, I like the way that sounds, but I just had an idea because sometimes I'll choose more than one counter snare. So when I'm doing that, I kind of want to save some room for the other counter snares. So instead of having this fast ending here, I've got an idea for when I add the next sound. So I'm going to save some space there. Right, cool. Let's listen to this pattern. Like the way that sounds. Alright, cool. I'm happy with that so far. Like I said, I'm going to change a few things in that last section once I add the next counter snare. So remember, a quick way to go back to the pack is to just click and drag in here. And I'm going to find a different sound. Something with a bit of a different tone. Maybe this one. So you don't always have to add more than one hi-hat or more than one counter snare. Sometimes I like to do it just to keep things interesting, but if I'm doing it, I won't go overboard. So for example, I might take another one to accent some of the previous notes or to just add a little bit of variation. So for example, I could skip a few notes in this one, but then replace them with the other counter snare, and it just creates an interesting sound. So let's see what we can do. So F7 to go to the piano roll once again, or just right click and hit piano roll. First thing that I had in mind was to do something at the end, and what I want to do is bring it down in pitch. Okay, so first of all, I'm just picking the notes that I want. Then I'm hitting control, clicking and dragging, Alt and U to chop them again. So I've chopped them this length, and I'm just going to play with the velocity. Maybe tweak a few notes or get rid of some just to help with the bounce. Try bringing these down. So if you look, it's still following that hi-hat pattern. I'm starting it on this one. You can see the ghost notes behind. This one's starting on that. So it's kind of accent notes, but I saved space in the first one so that I could fill in the gaps here. So that was the idea I had for the end of the phrase, but at the beginning, I just want to accent a couple notes too. And by accent, I just mean layer in the existing ones. Cool, so I like that pattern. I can copy this one across. See how this sounds now. Okay, I think it just needs some in here. Try the same pattern. Alright, cool. I think I like the sound. Yeah, I think that sounds sick. Just tweaking the velocity a little bit. That should be good now. Alright, so now what I'm thinking to do with the second counter snare, just to make it more interesting for the listener, is to pan some of the notes. So you don't always have to pan at the mixing stage, you don't always have to pan from this bit here, you can actually pan the individual notes. So like you were doing the velocity, if you go down to control and then note pan, I'm going to tweak some of them here. And when I'm panning stuff like this, I just like to find a good balance. So if I'm panning a certain amount of sounds to the left, I want to balance it out by panning other sounds to the right. With this one, I just want to balance it with this one sound. So with some of the notes, I'm going to pan them to the left. With some, I'm going to pan them to the right. All you need to know is the middle section here is 0% panned. All the way down to the bottom is 100% panned to the left. All the way to the top, it's 100% to the right. So let's see what we can do. And they don't always have to be perfectly even. I can just move some of these like this. I'm just going left to right, right to left. Okay, with this section, I'm going to highlight these notes so none of the others get panned. I'm right clicking and dragging to the top to bring the first roll to the right. With this one, I could bring this down to the left. And then with this one, let's start right and then drag down to the left. Something like this. So if you're listening with headphones, you're going to hear that more clearly. Let's play it from the beginning. I think that just sounds a lot more interesting. Cool, so I'm happy with that now. I'm just going to rename this one Counter Snare 2. And I think that's going to be it for Counter Snares for now. When I start making other beats and breaking down things like New York drill beats, I can show you a few other options. And also when I get to the mixing stage, I can show you a few more techniques to get them sounding a little bit more interesting. But yeah, I think that's going to be it for this video. In the next video, I'm going to be going through everyone's favorite part, which is the 808s. So I'll see you then.